Hello guys, welcome to part 6 of the Workstation build. In this video, I will be doing more preparation work. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install one of my first Blu-ray drives I put in this Workstation build, the Pioneer BDR209DBK. This will do dual layer 1080p Blu-rays, rips them just fine, plays them just fine with Make MKV. It's a great drive. It's actually much more quieter than my Asus Libre drive. I really like it. There's the manual. You can see the model number right there. And there will be the screws from the case. So let's go ahead and pop this side panel off. I also had to pop off the back panel as well, because we have to access both sides to be able to secure the screws on the caddy. So I'm going to stick my hand into the bottom drive caddy and push in on the retention lever, the clips, and then the front cover will just pop just right out like so. I'll grab the drive and then it will slide into the bottom caddy. You might have to release the lock there so it can come in. It can be a little tricky, so you have to like fiddle with it. And then, boop, it slides in. You'll know when it slides in because you'll hear it. It will click. Now, if I was a lazy technician, I would leave it like that. But I'm professional. I prefer to have the drives properly screwed in. I don't trust the click-in things. And it's just more professional. So I got the screws. I've identified the screws. These screws are very tiny, so it helps to have a magnetized bit. The screws will come with your case, so you have to look at your case accessory box and find the right ones for the optical disc drive. Usually they'll be labeled ODD. Gotta be very careful too. These just need to be snug. They don't need to be too tight. Just snug, and you don't want to strip the heads on these. They can strip very, very easily if you're using the wrong driver or you're applying too much force. So we got that side secured. You can see it's screwed in, professional grade, right? So we have to do the other side. There is what it looks like with the drive installed. That's kind of like a back view. I'm just checking the front, making sure everything looks flush. All the optical drives look flush together. So now we're going to change out the BIOS battery. The battery for pretty much all motherboards is going to be a CR2032. I recommend doing this because when I do a brand new build, I don't really trust the battery that's already in it. It could have been sitting on a shelf for a few years. So it's just good practice to, especially when you're building a new build, just swap that BIOS battery out with a fresh one. You can pick these up at any store. You can get them at Walmart, you can get them at pharmacy, etc. Just a CR2032. Now, there will be a sticker on the bottom of the battery. You want to make sure that you peel that off. That's very important. Otherwise, the battery won't work. So you can see right there, there's our current KTS BIOS battery. To get this out, you're going to take a small flathead and you're going to push in on the retention lever and use the flathead to kind of wedge the battery out once that retention lever has been pushed. Be very careful doing this because there are pads underneath that make contact with the battery, and if you put your flathead in there too far or you're too aggressive with it, you can end up busting the bottom contact pad. So I had to move the case more in my direction so I had better leverage at it. Depending on the socket, the battery socket, you might be able to get it out with just your fingers, but normally that's not always the case. You're going to need a small flathead screwdriver. You could also use like a spludger or something like that. There it goes. The battery just popped out like so. I'll get the new CR2032 battery, and this one you just pop it in. And the BIOS battery has been replaced. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is I'm going to install the bottom fan. It's funny because I actually ended up removing the bottom fan because I found it unnecessary and just brought in more dust. But since I filmed it, I might as well show anyway. I also have some bottom fan filters. They're magnetic, so they can stick to the bottom of the case. The reason why is because there isn't a bottom filter for the bottom fans. There's just a bottom filter for just the power supply, which I think is a big design flaw from Corsair with their 7050D. They should have made the filter go across the entire bottom, especially since they have mounts for 2 bottom fans. So there's the fan I'll be using, Noctua one, and it will mount on the bottom. You want to make sure you have it in the right direction so you're bringing air in, because the bottom is going to be an intake. So I go to the case accessory box and identify the correct screws for fans. These are usually coarse threaded screws. When I position the fan in the case, I want to position it to where the cable run is going to be the most efficient and logical, and also the fan is in the right polarity. So this is going to be a bottom intake fan, so you want the sticker facing upwards. So I'm going to set the case fully down so we have full access to the bottom panel. As you can see with the 750D case, you have space for 2 bottom fans. I actually don't recommend installing bottom or top fans at all. I don't. All you need is the 2 in the front and the 1 in the back for the vast majority of applications. Installing excessive fans just adds noise, consumes more power, and will draw in more dust into your case. It is unnecessary and silly. It's more for looks. Like I said, I ended up uninstalling the bottom fan, and I put I didn't put the entire hard drive brackets back in, but I put the bottom hard drive covers back in. So this bottom space just isn't wide open for dust and stuff to accumulate into the case. So I was actually able to cover the entire bottom of the case properly. You can see there on the left-hand side the filter for the power supply, but they should have extended that across the entire bottom. So I'm going to line up the fan with the screw holes. I believe this is a 120 millimeter fan. So you just want to get the screws in each thread, just like 3/4 of a turn. You don't want to screw them in all the way. You want to make sure everything's lined up and it's getting threaded properly. So to hold the fan in place, I will screw them in just a little bit more, just to hold the fan, so I can get the other 2 screws. Generally, once you have one axis on, the other screw holes are going to be pretty much threaded up all right. It's just getting those 2 sides aligned properly. And see, those 2 screws that I just screwed, they're not screwed in all the way. They're still a bit loose. That way I can still wiggle the fan around and realign it if need be. Now these screws, they're coarse threaded, so they kind of like dig into the plastic frame of the fan. That is pretty normal for fan screws. So even if you're just off a little bit, they're still going to bite. Makes sense? So the alignment on fans isn't as important because they're coarse thread, but you get the gist. So now I'm going around and fully tighten each screw, making sure it's snug. These don't need to be incredibly tight, just make them snug. So as you can see, the bottom fan has been successfully mounted. I will route the cable out through the nearest grommet and to the closest fan header and the appropriate fan header for this specific fan type and its application. So it's going to go to a system fan header, obviously. It's not going to go to like a CPU header. So as you can see there, I'm just going to align the bottom fan filter. You want to have a fan filter. For any intake fans, you want to have a filter. These are just magnetic filters that just stick to the bottom of the metal case chassis. But actually the magnetism of these filters is pretty awful. So they end up falling off after a while. I give them 1 out of 5 stars. You can see they stay on, but you could just see the weak magnetism. But there we go. That's the bottom fan installed, and that concludes this video.